Augusta 378.
3 Augusta.
378, have a 1055 unknown PI, 2 vehicles at the intersection of Route 202 and 17 in Manchester. 10-3.
A state trooper heads off to investigate a call. What lies ahead is in most cases a mystery. Injury, danger, death are only a few possibilities. What sort of people work in a profession where trouble is the specialty and stress routine? In this program, Inside New England takes a look at the profession of police work in State Trooper, the people behind the badge. The state of Maine established its state police force in 1925, charging it with enforcing all criminal laws of the state. Easily said, somewhat difficult to carry out.
It was something new, and there's an awful lot of questions. For example, the stop signs when they came down. Everybody would say, does that mean you have to stop? I say, what does it say? It says stop. Well, I says, that's what it means. And the most difficult thing was communication, a lack of it. You was entirely on your own. The word backup didn't mean a thing. We never heard of it. The only backup you might say you had was the nearest telephone.
To patrol the state, troopers were issued motorcycles for use in both summer and winter. For snow and ice, a sidecar was attached for added stability, but there was little the troopers could do to fight off the cold of a Maine winter.
I froze both knees so many times that now I have artificial knees. They're all steel. The cartilage is all gone from freezing. You had to have that open space over the leg guard for an air-cooled motor, and it hits you right in the knees. I used to put newspaper under my breeches to kind of protect them. But I come in from a ride at 20 below zero and tap my knees with a hammer just like hitting a piece of wood.
Learning by doing, these early troopers set the standards of image and professionalism that survive today, attracting hundreds of trooper applicants each year. But not everyone can be a state trooper.
Right from day one when you apply, you take your written test. We lose a lot of people there. We lose people at the oral interview stage, which is a very trying stage. Lose people at the polygraph. One of the most stressful experiences of my life is being on the polygraph. I was on that machine for 2.5, 2 3/4 hours, sweating bullets.
The screening that the department does at this time is basically to assess what troopers would be inappropriate because it is still somewhat difficult to make a real positive statement about who would be the best troopers. But there is clear evidence about who would be inappropriate. And these are people who tend to be very hyperactive, impulsive. They tend not to plan ahead very much.
And the key is to weed out those people who are the worst, who are there, who want to become a trooper for all the wrong reasons. Maybe they like the electric blue suit we wear. Maybe they like the power and the prestige that comes with a position. We have to get rid of those people. We have to find people that want to be a trooper for the right reasons, and what it basically boils down to is public service.
Once accepted, applicants may wonder what they've gotten themselves into. Cadet life consists of 18 tough weeks of physical training, classroom study, and psychological conditioning. Many never make it.
Life here at the Academy is similar to that in boot camp. Anyone who's been in the service will understand what that's all about. It's a strict regimentation, getting them prepared for a paramilitary organization.
How about if someone was lying, almost dying in the hospital? In the same situation, could you take the assailant to the hospital for that person to be identified? Or would that be prejudicial identification? Later, let's say that victim is dying. Depends on the circumstances, doesn't it?
Some of the classroom instructions would be laws of arrest, search and seizure, the Constitution, things of that nature, along with child abuse, dealing with an irate individual, emergency committals, things of that nature. From a physical standpoint, we have a strict physical program going on where there's defensive tactics going on every other day where they learn how to take care of themselves in a confrontation. A physical agility type program where we try to get them to exercise quick thinking on their feet. They'll spend a week on a firing range, a week on a driving range, become very proficient at shooting and driving prior to leaving here.
The other hand doesn't come up, he's hiding the other hand, you know, kind of work him out, tell him, give me your other hand, okay? You've got control here, boom. You've got this arm in here, and what you're doing is you're exerting pain on the person.
Cadet life is certainly a challenge. Again, I'm here for a purpose. I came here open-minded to accept whatever they threw at me. It was certainly an investment and a sacrifice to do this, and I intend to stay for the duration of 18 weeks and survive this and become a state trooper.
My husband's great. In fact, he's getting used to doing the dishes and watching the kids all week and doing the laundry, and he takes it very well. The boys, my two sons, quite don't understand how long it's taking. Every week I come home, they ask where my police car is. They're not sure the length of time Mama's going to be gone.
Training is not without hazards. In 1986, Trooper Michael Veyu was practicing high-speed pursuit with an instructor when his cruiser crashed. Veyu was killed at the age of 23. For the millions of tourists that travel the highways of Maine, the first introduction to the state police is usually this rather intimidating sign posted along the Maine Turnpike. It looks serious, and it is serious. The state troopers that work on the highways of Maine have one of the busiest jobs in the force. It has been estimated that one reportable traffic accident occurs in Maine every 13 minutes, and in 1 year alone, troopers wrote more than 40,000 speeding tickets.
We are a team, the Maine State Police are, and the trooper is at the pinnacle of that team. He's the man that's out there. He has the dangerous position. He's the one that walks up to the vehicles on a daily basis, not knowing whether a license will come out of the window or a weapon.
Sir, I'll need your driver's license, registration, and insurance.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the reason I stopped is you were speeding. This is a posted 65 zone. You were going 86 miles an hour.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be with you in a few minutes.
Okay.
Pretty much your major concern, or my major concern when I'm stopping a motor vehicle is the operator, who in this case would be the violator. You know, in a motor vehicle violation, he's the violator, and you know, you're concerned with this person, and that's pretty much the only thing you're worried about while you're approaching the vehicle. If there's more than one person in the vehicle, then your attention has to be directed to not only the driver, but for 1 or 2, maybe 3 passengers that are in the vehicle. So, you know, a basic stop could be as easy as dealing with one violator or a whole carload full of intoxicated people.
For troopers fresh out of the academy, being issued a cruiser and patrol area seems a welcome reward for the months of physical and mental testing they survived in training. Highly skilled and confident new troopers soon discover the hidden stresses of police work.
The first couple years an officer is on the job, they're more or less on a honeymoon in the sense that they are inclined to be gung-ho and so forth. This often is a very stressful period for officers' families. The likelihood of divorce within the first 3 years is very high.
Simply driving down a beautiful country lane is stressful for a police officer because you're in a marked cruiser, you're all dressed up in your uniform, and you don't know what the next bend in the road is going to bring, and you don't know what the next call on the radio is going to say. So that there's that underlying grinding stress constantly in the pit of your stomach. And it's so subtle sometimes that you don't even realize it's there.
Troopers learn quickly that there is no such thing as routine. In 1964, Trooper Charles Black traveled to South Berwick, Maine for a routine court appearance. Notified of a possible robbery at a bank down the street, Trooper Black went to investigate. He was met at the door by two bandits, one of whom produced a gun and shot the trooper 5 times, killing him. Both bandits were later captured. Patrol officers have a more visible and therefore more dangerous role in the department. Troopers that function in other roles confront other hazards. The detectives who work on cases of child abuse in the state find the investigations emotionally trying, not only for the child and the accused, but for the detectives themselves.
We generally recognize that we face the problem that 1 in 4 persons in the country are a victim of child abuse. Now, if that is true, if 1 in 4 persons in our population is a victim, then mustn't it be true that 1 in 4 of our population is a perpetrator? From my point of view, or my perspective, the difficult cases are where you see the red flags where the child looks down, it doesn't have this wholesome glow that a child should have, and finally ending up with no disclosure at all, and knowing in your heart that that child is going back to a dangerous situation. Those are the cases which are most trying, because the only thing that you can do is just wait. We, as investigators, I think, are finding ourselves, we are not infallible, and we are not people who do not wear down. The fact of the matter is we do wear down. And because these cases are so emotion-packed, I think that as time goes on, the child abuse investigators they themselves a victim of that.
The Maine State Police is a diversified organization with services that include a tactical team, an underwater recovery unit, and the canine unit.
The dogs are assigned to the individual handler at the end of the 16-week program. We're responsible for the upkeep of the dogs. They stay at home with us 7 days a week. They ride with us in the patrol vehicle. We've been on the road for about 2.5 years, and in that time we've had about 10 or 15 felony arrests and about as many misdemeanor arrests for different things, whether it's house breaks or people bailing out of vehicles and taken off into the woods. One of the commands that the dog learns is to watch somebody, and that means if somebody's acting in a suspicious manner, the dog will sit or stand and bark and growl at the person in either an attempt to scare them away or just keep an eye on them. And I'll show you that command. Okay, 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 sit, sit, Shadow, sit. Okay. The other thing that the dog has to learn after the commands of any aggressive command, either the watch command or the command that you use to send him after a bite, the dog has to show tolerance to that person. So if the person that were agitating him were to come towards him now, the dog would not show any aggressive response to him at all.
The dogs are most often used for their sense of smell, which can be used to find drugs, evidence, or crime suspects.
The tracking that we do is known as a passive find, which means if Shadow finds somebody at the end of a track, that he doesn't react aggressively. That means if he'll just walk up to the person and put his nose on the person so that I know that he's got who he's looking for. And we do that because in the case of a lost child or something like that, if I happen to lose the lead and the dog gets away from me, he'll continue to track and he'll find him and won't fight him.
Homicide detectives often face the problem of reconstructing a murder with no eyewitnesses except the killer. Evidence is often sparse, interviews time-consuming, a frustrating fact when a murderer is still out there.
In the criminal division, each case that's been resolved, including child abuse, sexual assaults, homicides, they all give me a sense, and I know the men that work with me, a sense of gratification of accomplishing something very important. And I guess the real whodunits, as they say, the real intense, complex cases, very large sense of gratification. When you're able to put the puzzle together, that's when you know that the men and women are doing their job. Sometimes you don't, you know, become so accustomed that you become hardened, as they say. But you also have escapes, in a sense. You put the bad things out of your mind, and well, although you're focusing on documenting the facts of the case, you also try to think about the positive aspects of what you're doing.
Evidence from crime scenes is examined at the crime laboratory in Augusta. Identities are established through body fluids, hair, or human fingerprints.
We place the item in an airtight container that we have here in the fingerprint laboratory, and we apply superglue in liquid form, and we heat the superglue up using a 60-watt light bulb, and then the superglue gases, which is called cyanoacrylate, will engulf the interior of that container, and if there are any fingerprints on the item, they will develop white, latent fingerprints. Latent mean hidden from view. You actually can't see it with the naked eye until it is developed.
The fingerprint is photographed and compared with fingerprints on file. Once identified, the two prints are enlarged for court presentation.
We have a characteristic in the center of the impression, which is called a ridge ending. We have the same characteristic on the latent impression located in the same area. All 10 characteristics are in identical sequence, making both these impressions identical.
The ballistics department studies and identifies evidence of weaponry, such as guns or bullets.
This is our bullet water recovery tank. It's made of 1/4-inch steel, 10 feet long, 4 feet deep and 2.5 feet wide. It's filled with water, and water is the best medium for recovering spent bullets. Once a bullet is received in the laboratory from either a victim or from a crime scene, then we test fire the alleged firearm used. Shooting into this tank, we recover the bullet and then use that bullet as our test bullet in comparing the bullet found either from the victim or from a crime scene.
It's very imperative for us to be able to give the investigators as much information about this bullet as possible. One of the ways we do this is by the use of this instrument. It's made by Unitron. It's a measuring projector. The total class characteristics of a spent bullet are crucial in identifying what type of firearm the bullet was fired from. One of the points of identification of class characteristics would be the groove of this bullet, for example.
In 1959, a Limerick man held police at bay in a 5-hour shooting rampage that left his wife and 1 policeman dead and a trooper critically wounded. At the height of the gun battle, in the sights of the crazed killer, 2 troopers were able to rescue their wounded buddy. Finally, the gunman took his own life.
Police often are dealing with very difficult situations, and their role in society is to take care of these things, and in my opinion, this contributes to some extent to some of the psychological problems that some officers have. That is, that officers who take a very strong sense of responsibility for things that they may not be able to control very well often end up with some form of stress-related symptom. Divorce rates, disability problems, physical symptoms, high blood pressure, and so forth.
Cops sometimes look at themselves as being a little bit invulnerable, impregnable. They feel like there's some sort of a rock, an island out there, and that they can take all the stresses, and they think they're doing pretty good. And we do. You know, we put on a good front for people. Things are getting to us down deep when we go to a fatal accident.
The blue lights don't work miracles when responding to emergency calls, especially on crowded streets like this. In this call, a car has left the turnpike and struck a tree. Witnesses said the brake lights never came on. Both travelers were killed on impact.
This time of day, you get a lot of people that have a late lunch and the sun be shining and they get warm inside the car and comfortable, and next thing you know, they doze off. In the case with elderly people, it might be a medication or a health problem as well. So it could be any number of things that contribute to an accident of this nature.
The most dangerous aspect of accident scenes are passers-by, whose curiosity can often cause more collisions. While the investigating officer deals with the press, other troopers assist rescue units with the victims.
You do become callous to a point that you can look at it objectively. You have to. When you're at a scene like this, if you have passers-by, someone has to be in charge. You have to take control of the situation and put your emotions in check. I think we all suffer from the human syndrome in that when I leave to go home at work, I might have a good cry, especially if it was children.
The job of a state trooper cannot simply be peeled off with a uniform at day's end. For family, friends, and neighbors, a trooper's entire identity is tied up with the job, on or off duty.
You can't go down to the local corner tavern where you make a habit of arresting drunk drivers every weekend. You can't go down there and have a brew or two and sit with a gang and drive home after a couple. It just doesn't work that way. You're always carrying the weight of being a state trooper with you. It's like a little bit of baggage that you carry in a knapsack on your back wherever you go.
The lifestyle of a state trooper is one that is at best difficult. It is a profession that is both physically and emotionally demanding, day in and day out, for the people behind the badge.
Well, basically the philosophy is to be fair, firm, and friendly. That's our philosophy in a nutshell. However, one of my philosophies is, and always has been, that the trooper is the backbone of the Maine State Police. And yes, that trooper has the same type of feelings that everyone else has. He has a family, he has children, and in many cases grandchildren. They go to school, he pays taxes. He has the same type of problems that many of the citizens have. What makes him stand out, though, is his training. That at the academy, that is where we prepare him to cope with the stresses that he will encounter out into the field. And he has no one to back him up. I mean, he's alone in these rural areas, so he has to be self-reliant and effective.